Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. Tonight we are doing something a little different.
Yeah, we are. It's a bit of a shift for us.
Usually, we're parsing through modern data, tech trends, or historical biographies, but tonight we're turning down the lights, getting comfortable, and stepping into a bit of a time machine.
That's right. We are dialing the clock all the way back to April 5th, 1967.
It's a Wednesday night, roughly 9:15 p.m.
The vibe is definitely late night chat. You can almost smell the cigarette smoke and hear the clacking of the typewriter in the background.
Yeah, we're diving into a very specific moment in time, session 332 of the Seth Material. Specifically, this is from the early sessions, book 7.
And before we get too deep into the metaphysics, the time travel, and the strange biology of thoughts, we have to get a little housekeeping out of the way.
Right, the mandatory stuff.
Exactly. It is highly important to state clearly right up front that this podcast will be distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Absolutely. We are here to learn, to explore, and frankly, to have our minds blown a little bit. And tonight is no exception for you listening at home.
No exception at all.
Yeah.
We're looking at some concepts that, honestly, if you really sit with them, they're kind of terrifying.
But also incredibly empowering.
It is a strange mix, isn't it? We're chilling out, having a relaxed conversation, but the things we're discussing are heavy hitters. Telepathy, the physical biology of thought, the seduction of depression.
Heavy hitters is right. We've got this concept of spooky action at a distance, but not in a physics lab. We're talking about a classroom.
Right.
We're talking about how you might be telepathically forcing people to be annoying without even realizing it.
Which is a really confronting thought for anyone who thinks they are just an innocent bystander in their relationships.
Yeah.
It forces you to look at your own broadcast signal.
And then there is this phrase that jumped out at me from the notes, the luxury of despair.
Oh, that is a big one. That is the absolute anchor of this whole session for me.
It sounds poetic, but it's actually a trap. It's about why feeling bad sometimes feels so good and why that is so incredibly dangerous.
So our mission tonight is to really unpack all of this. We are going to look at how our internal images physically alter our biology.
Literally manufacturing hormones.
Yes. And how our reluctance to help others might actually be draining our batteries way more than the helping itself.
It's a paradox. And Seth, the personality speaking through Jane Roberts, loves a good paradox.
He really does. He loves to take what we think is common sense and just flip it on its head to show us the actual mechanics underneath.
So let's set the scene properly for you. We are in Elmira, New York, 1967. Who is in the room on this Wednesday night, because the context really matters here.
It does matter. Well, you have the regulars. You have Jane Roberts, who is channeling Seth. She is referred to as Rupert in the sessions.
Which is her entity name, right? Representing her larger self.
Exactly. And you have her husband, Rob Butts, who is furiously taking notes. He's called Joseph. But tonight, there is a guest.
A third wheel.
A witness, really. His name is Bill McDonnell, referred to by Seth as Mark. And Bill isn't just there to watch. He has some problems.
Don't we all?
Right. Specifically, Bill has come with health complaints. He witnessed the session and had asked earlier if Seth would speak about his health problems.
And Seth, being Seth, doesn't just say, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. He goes right to the energetic root of the issue.
This is what I love about these sessions. It is never just, my back hurts. It's my back hurts because of my soul. Or my back hurts because of how I view the universe.
Exactly. It connects the physical symptom directly to the psychic cause. Seth starts by addressing specific physical pressure Bill is feeling in the 3rd and 7th vertebrae.
That is oddly specific, 3rd and 7th.
Very specific. It shows that Seth isn't just speaking in generalities, he's scanning the body. And the diagnosis isn't about posture or lifting heavy boxes.
It's about his work style. Seth tells Bill that he needs a, quote, steady rather than too spasmodic application to his work.
Spasmodic application. I feel seen. I think that describes my entire college career.
Just bursts of panic-induced productivity followed by nothing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a common creative trait.
Seth actually acknowledges that. He says Bill works quickly and intuitively, and that's beneficial. He says he will always work quickly and intuitively. This is beneficial and characteristic of him.
So he isn't trying to change Bill's nature. He isn't saying, Bill, you need to be a methodical plotter.
That's reassuring.
Yeah.
He's not telling him to become an accountant.
No. But he has a caveat. Thought and planning can be utilized, however, when he is not working well. The idea is that the thought and planning will then show itself even in the intuitional work.
It's about bridging the gaps so the intuitive bursts have a structure to land on.
So he's burning hot and cold, and that fluctuation is physically manifesting in his spine.
In a way, yeah. The spasmodic nature of his energy is creating physical tension. But it goes deeper than just work habits. Seth brings up something called the People series.
The People series, what's that?
It seems to be an artistic project Bill is working on. Bill was an artist, a painter. Seth calls it a necessary step for a new development.
Okay, so it's important for him.
Yes, Seth says it should be followed through, for it will open him to new developments. But here is the kicker. Bill has high psychic ability.
Okay, so Bill is talented.
He is. Seth confirms the psychic abilities are considerable, but then he drops the hammer. He says under the prison conditions, however, he is not likely to utilize them fully.
Why not? What's blocking him? If he has the talent, why isn't it working?
Because he's a sponge.
A sponge, like he just absorbs everything.
Seth says because he is sensitive to various elements, he also soaks up atmosphere and suggestions like a sponge, and he has not learned to protect himself.
Oh, man. We all know that person. Or maybe you are that person. You walk into a party, someone is in a bad mood in the corner, and suddenly you are in a bad mood and you have no idea why.
You just soaked it up?
Precisely. It's the downside of empathy if it's not managed. If you have high sensitivity, which is necessary for being an artist or a psychic, you are open.
But if you don't have filters, you are open to garbage just as much as you're open to inspiration.
So it's an indiscriminate absorption.
Yes. And Seth explains the mechanism of vulnerability here. It's fascinating. He says Bill is unable to handle his own energy.
What does that mean, unable to handle his own energy? That sounds like he's holding a live wire.
That's actually a great image for it. Seth elaborates. At times, his own energy frightens him, and then it seems to abandon him completely.
That is a profound statement. Being frightened of your own energy. I think a lot of people dim their light because they're afraid of what will happen if they really turn it on.
They're afraid of being too much, or they're afraid that if they unleash their full power, they might destroy something.
Yes, it's a fear of one's own magnitude. And when Bill abandons his own energy because of this fear, he creates a vacuum. He retreats.
And what happens to a vacuum in physics?
It gets filled. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Right. Seth says, here, however, he has abandoned it, for he succumbs easily to negative suggestions. When he's in a poor period, physically or mentally, he becomes almost completely vulnerable.
The negativity just walks right in the front door because he hasn't locked it.
He has retreated from his own house, so to speak.
It's like leaving your windows open during a dust storm because you were afraid to turn on the air conditioning. You were scared of the machines, so you let the storm in.
That's a really good analogy.
Huh.
And the result is physical pain. That pressure in the vertebrae, the psychic weight becomes physical weight.
Seth says, so that it operates through his own psychic and physical system.
The negative suggestions from the outside get processed by his body as if they were his own.
That is terrifying. You're processing other people's trash through your own kidneys. So does Seth give him a prescription? Or a shield? How does a sponge become water resistant?
He gives him a mantra, a specific suggestion to use when he feels this vulnerability. He advises Bill to often give himself the following suggestion.
I'm listening. I might need this for my next family gathering or my next scroll through social media.
The phrase is, I will only react to constructive suggestions.
I will only react to constructive suggestions. Short, sweet.
It's a boundary. It's telling your subconscious, look, I know there is a lot of noise out there, but we are only tuning into the signal.
I like that. It's not ignoring reality. It's filtering it. It's active, not passive.
It reminds me of setting up a spam filter for your brain. You aren't deleting the internet, you're just sending the junk to the trash folder.
Exactly. Note the word react. He doesn't say, I will only perceive constructive suggestions. You still see the negative stuff, you just don't react to it.
You don't let it land and take root in your biology.
That is a crucial distinction. It's not blindness, it's immunity.
And that leads us directly into the next segment, because Seth doesn't just leave it at a mantra. He gives a technique for what to do when the negative stuff is already gotten in.
Or when you're the one generating it. Because let's be honest, sometimes we are the ones creating the spam.
We really are. And that brings us to the mental eraser.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because I feel like think positive is such a cliche. We see it on coffee mugs, we see it on Instagram.
But Seth is getting into the mechanics of how to actually do it, right?
Right. This isn't toxic positivity where you just smile and pretend everything is fine while your house is burning down. This is about reality creation and biology.
It's about data management in the brain.
So what is the wipeout method?
Seth's instruction is very precise. He says, When you find yourself facing such negative images in your mind, projecting them into the future, you should at once mentally wipe out that image and place it with a constructive image.
At once. No wallowing. No playing the tape a few more times just to see how bad it gets.
No wallowing. Immediate action. It's like a reflex. And he gives a specific visual for Bill to use as an anchor.
He suggests imagining yourself sitting in command of a well-ordered room.
A well-ordered room.
Mm.
I'm trying to picture what Bill's idea of a well-ordered room was in 1967.
Probably less IKEA, more mahogany, maybe in a nice Eames chair.
Maybe some nice shag carpet, a pipe rack, a globe bar in the corner.
Possibly. Even Bill asks in the session, well-ordered room. He's confused. It seems a bit mundane for a metaphysical entity.
He probably looked around Jane and Rob's apartment and thought, well, it doesn't look like this.
Seth clarifies that the imagery is key. Sitting in command. It's about agency.
It's about reestablishing that you are the one running the show, not your fears. He says this must be done immediately and upon every such occasion and under every such circumstance.
That sounds like a lot of work. Every such occasion. That is mental discipline.
It is. It's cognitive behavioral therapy before CBT was mainstream. Seth says this exercise will indeed wipe out the previous negative image.
It's not just a distraction, it's an overwrite command.
So you wipe out the scary movie playing in your head and you project this image of stability and control.
Exactly. And to illustrate why this is necessary, Seth uses a case study that I think everyone can relate to. He talks about a student named Johnny F.
Johnny F., the troublemaker, the kid in the back of the class with a spitball.
Or is he? That's the question. Seth poses a scenario. A teacher expects Johnny F. to misbehave in study hall tomorrow.
Okay, we've all had that coworker or that family member where you're just dreading seeing them because you know they're going to be difficult.
You start pre-living the conflict.
Right. You're rehearsing the argument in the shower. You're playing out the scenario where Johnny F. throws a book or makes a snide comment. You are visualizing the disaster in high definition.
And Seth says this is bad.
He says it's more than bad. It's active sabotage. He says if you imagine that a particular student will misbehave, you are automatically sending him a telepathic message to that effect.
Ooh. So the teacher is basically radioing Johnny and saying, hey, act up.
Yes, the expectation is a command. And if Johnny is susceptible...
If he's a sponge like Bill.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He will carry out the suggestion without even knowing why. He'll just feel an urge to be annoying.
That is wild. It's like the Pygmalion effect, where higher expectations lead to better performance, but with a psychic twist.
It's not just that your body language changes. You are literally broadcasting the instruction into his brain.
You are writing the script for him, and then when he acts up, you say, see, I knew it. Johnny F. is a nightmare. But you helped cause it. You directed the scene.
Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. It forces you to look at every conflict in your life differently. Are they being difficult, or am I broadcasting be difficult on a loop?
It's a haunting question. If you are constantly anticipating rejection or anger or incompetence from someone, you are bathing them in the telepathic suggestion to be rejected, angry, or incompetent.
So the solution, according to Seth, is to imagine Johnny F. behaving well. This sends a constructive suggestion.
So if I have a meeting with a difficult boss, instead of imagining him yelling at me, I should imagine him being calm and reasonable.
Exactly. You change the broadcast. Seth says, when you replace this with a constructive thought, you are sending that constructive suggestion to which he will also react.
Even if he's a difficult person, you aren't adding fuel to the fire. You're sending cooling signals.
I feel like this puts a lot of responsibility on us. We can't just blame Johnny F. anymore.
It does. It removes the luxury of being a victim of circumstance. But Seth explains why this works. And it's not just magic, it's biology.
This is the part that really bridges the gap for me.
Yes. Remember, this is 1967. We weren't talking about neuroplasticity or the mind-body connection the way we do now.
No, this was cutting edge. Seth states plainly, such images affect your whole physical system through the manufacture of hormones and chemicals.
Suggestions, whether given to you or given by you, cause an emotional situation that automatically affects the production of hormones and chemicals. That is a direct quote.
It's a huge statement. A thought isn't just a wisp of smoke. It isn't just in your mind. It's a chemical trigger. It has mass and velocity in the body.
So when I'm sitting there stewing about Johnny F., I'm marinating my own organs in stress hormones.
You are. And you're likely triggering a chemical response in Johnny, too, via that telepathic link. Seth applies this to health, too.
He says, Anytime you see yourself in your mind as unhealthy or staggering, you must immediately wipe the image away and make an effort to see instead a mental image of yourself as healthy and strong.
Because if you picture yourself staggering, you are manufacturing the chemicals to make yourself stagger. You are instructing your nervous system to fail.
Precisely. Seth compares negative thoughts to errors in a painting.
Errors in a painting.
He says you must correct them instantly. You don't leave a big black smudge on the canvas and just keep painting around it. You wipe it out, you fix it.
I love that visual, because if you leave the error, it defines the rest of the picture. Everything else has to warp to accommodate it.
If you paint a tree upside down, the rest of the landscape has to become surreal to make sense of it.
Exactly. And this leads us to what happens when you don't wipe it out, when you let the errors pile up, when you let the smudge become the whole painting.
You end up in what Seth calls the luxury of despair.
The luxury of despair. This is my favorite phrase of the whole session. It sounds so Victorian Gothic.
It really does. It sounds like a cologne for poets, the luxury of despair. But it describes a very real, very trap-like psychological state.
Let's break down the loop first. How do we get there?
Well, it starts with that poor state of mind we talked about. Seth describes the cycle. When you are in a poor state of mind, you automatically affect the others you meet negatively.
So you become the bad vibe broadcaster. You're walking around transmitting static.
Yes. You then react to their behavior and complete the circle. They treat you badly because you broadcasted negativity, and then you say, why is everyone treating me badly?
And you feel worse. You validate your own bad mood.
The spiral.
Seth calls it a highly charged emotional environment, which is the cause of the depressions of which you have spoken. It's a feedback loop of negativity.
And when you reach the bottom, when the loop tightens,
Self-pity takes over. And here's the quote that stopped me in my tracks. In a mood of self-pity, there is indeed an almost perverted luxury, the luxury of despair.
a perverted luxury. Why is it a luxury? Despair feels terrible. It feels heavy, dark, hopeless. How is that a luxury?
Does it? Or is it safe? Seth says, for despair says there's nothing I can do, and relieves you of any responsibility for change.
Ooh, that's spicy.
It's a get-out-of-jail-free card. If it's hopeless, you don't have to try. If nothing you do matters, you can just lie on the couch and eat ice cream in the dark.
I feel personally attacked.
It's a universal feeling. Trying is hard. Changing reality is hard. Managing your telepathic broadcasts is hard work.
Despair. Despair is easy. It demands nothing of you except suffering.
It's the ultimate surrender. It's not my fault. The world is against me. I'm helpless. And there is a weird comfort in that. It's the comfort of the womb, almost, but a dark, stagnant womb.
There is. But the cost is enormous. Seth says you become incapable of getting out of yourself, even to the extent of enjoying small pleasures.
So the joy just evaporates. You can't taste your food. You can't enjoy the sun.
Little by little, it seems every joy is withdrawn from you until nothing is left but despair.
That is bleak. It's like a dementor sucking the soul out of the room. It isolates you completely inside your own feedback loop.
It is. And Seth says this happens because of the culmination of negative suggestions and of negative thought. They build up until you can take it no longer. It's an accumulation of unerased errors.
So how do you break it? Do you just wait for the weather to change?
Well, Seth says in the natural state of affairs, eventually some highly charged positive suggestion then begins to clear the emotional air. Like a thunderstorm breaking a heat wave. You know that feeling when the humidity breaks?
Yes. The pressure builds and builds until crack, and then the rain comes and the air is clear.
But the goal, obviously, is not to wait for the thunderstorm, because the thunderstorm might take weeks or years. The goal is to not let the humidity build up in the first place.
Right. To use the mental eraser. To manage your sponge-like tendencies. To stop the cycle before you hit that luxury of despair. To realize that the luxury is actually a prison cell.
This connects really well to the next segment, which is about a very specific real-world example of this energy management. We're talking about Jane Roberts herself.
Yes, the medium. The channel. Even she deals with social anxiety and resentment. It's comforting to know that even the woman channeling this wisdom had to learn it the hard way.
I found this part so relatable. So Jane, or Rupert, as Seth calls her, had guests over earlier that day, a young woman in difficulty.
And Jane apparently didn't really want to deal with it. Seth says he felt trapped, unable to escape an unwanted situation.
I mean, who hasn't been there? You have work to do, you just want to chill, maybe you want to watch TV or write, and someone comes over with a crisis.
You feel like your social battery is being drained against your will.
And interestingly, Seth links this directly to Jane's physical symptoms. She was having foot difficulties.
Foot difficulties.
Seth says here, the foot difficulties, they were related to feeling unable to escape.
The body keeps a score. I can't run away, so my feet hurt. I can't stand the situation, so I can't stand.
Exactly. The psyche speaks through the soma. But here is where we get into the doormat fear. Jane and Rob have this fear that if they help others, if they open themselves up, they will be at the utter command of others.
The fear of being a doormat. If I give an inch, they'll take a mile. If I start helping, I'll never get my time back. I will be consumed by their needs.
It's a valid fear for many people, especially empathic people. Seth addresses it directly. He says, you both seem to fear that all your time will be consumed, or that you will be at the mercy of others if you give in at all.
It sounds like they're protecting their boundaries. Isn't that good? We talk about boundaries all the time now.
Seth says this alternative exists only in your own minds. He completely dismantles the fear. He reframes what helping actually does.
Oh, because it feels true. Helping people is exhausting.
Seth argues that helping others strengthens the I and identity. He says the development of your I and identity is strengthened and developed as you help others. This I is not threatened when you help others. It is threatened when you think that it is threatened.
Wait, unpack that. How does giving away energy strengthen you?
He's saying that the act of helping, the act of connecting, is naturally regenerative. It expands the self. Their inner gratitude enriches your own atmosphere. It's an energy circuit, not a battery drain.
So the energy exchange should be positive. You give help, you receive gratitude and connection, and you both leave higher.
It should be, but the resentment blocks it.
The resentment is the short circuit.
This is the paradox of resentment. Seth says to help and resent helping is worse for you than not to help at all.
Worse than not to help at all. So if you're going to help begrudgingly, you might as well just slam the door.
From an energy perspective, yes. Because when you help with resentment, you are deprived of time without the benefit of the energy exchange.
You get the drain or the time loss, you still lost the hour, but you block the recharge of the connection because you're seething the whole time.
That makes so much sense. You know when you do something for someone but you're grumpy about it the whole time, you feel exhausted afterwards, depleted, bitter. But if you do it because you genuinely want to, you feel kind of buzzed.
Exactly. Seth says, without wholehearted cooperation and willingness, then you will allow yourself to succumb to the problems others have brought you. That's the danger. That's the sponge effect again.
But with a willingness to help, you rise above both their problems and your own and are benefited in other ways.
So the lesson here is check your attitude. If you're going to help, go all in. If you can't go all in, maybe don't help right now. But don't do the halfway thing where you help but hate it. That's the worst of both worlds.
Right, and don't fear that helping makes you weak. Seth says, you will not become a doormat. Instead, you will be refreshed and strengthened. Genuine service is empowering. Reluctant servitude is draining.
It's about boundaries again, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's okay to say no, but if you say yes, mean it. Be present.
Precisely. And Seth, being the observant entity he is, wraps up this section with a bit of gossip and home decor advice.
I love this. The ghost with the tea.
He notes that the two guests, the girls causing all this stress, will likely separate anyway. He says the relationship is not particularly good for either of them and brings forth their weaknesses rather than their strengths.
So all that stress Jane felt was over a situation that was going to resolve itself anyway. She was twisting herself into knots over a temporary trauma.
Often the case. We worry about things that are naturally correcting themselves. And then, just to show he's paying attention to the environment, he says, the bookcase is a good addition, incidentally.
That cracks me up. Here is the secret to reality creation. Here's how to cure your spine. Here's the cure for depression. And by the way, nice bookcase. It really ties the room together.
It grounds the whole thing. It reminds us that Seth isn't some distant, lofty observer floating in the ether. He's in the room. He sees the struggle, he sees the despair, and he sees the furniture. He appreciates the physical reality we are creating.
So let's try to synthesize all of this for you. We've covered a lot of ground in 1967. We've gone from spinal pain to telepathy to bookcases.
We have the psychic sponge, Bill, who needs to learn to protect his energy and only react to constructive suggestions. He needs to stop being a victim of the atmosphere.
We have the mental eraser, the tool for wiping out negative projections so we don't telepathically turn our coworkers into monsters, the delete button for the mind.
We have the luxury of despair, the dangerous comfort of giving up, and how it robs us of joy, the trap of self-pity.
And we have the reluctant host, the lesson that resentment drains us, but genuine helping recharges us.
If we connect the mental eraser to the social battery concept, we get a holistic view of mental hygiene.
Mental hygiene, I like that. We brush our teeth every day, but we rarely brush our thoughts.
You need to protect yourself from negative suggestions. That's the wall. That's the I will only react to constructive suggestions, but you shouldn't close yourself off from helping others. That's the door.
The wall should be against negative thoughts, not people.
That is a crucial distinction. We aren't trying to become hermits. We aren't trying to dissociate. We are trying to become clearer broadcasters. We
Right.
want to transmit a clear signal, not static.
Exactly. Because we are always broadcasting. Whether we know it or not, you are a radio station that never goes off air.
Which raises a really provocative question for you to take with you tonight. This is the one that's going to keep me up.
It does. If every negative thought about someone else is a telepathic request for them to annoy you, how much of your bad luck with people is actually you?
Oof, that hits hard.
How much are you micromanaging the people in your life into being jerks via telepathy? How many times have you created the exact villain you're afraid of facing?
That is a confronting thought to end on. Maybe Johnny F isn't the problem. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe your broadcast is the problem.
It's possible. And if you are the problem, you are also the solution. That's the empowering part. You can change the channel.
Well, on that cheery note, we want to thank you for taking this deep dive with us tonight. This has been a trip.
It has. And we want to give credit where credit is due. The source material for this deep dive is the Seth Material, specifically the Early Sessions Book 7.
Published by the New Awareness Network, these guys are doing the Lord's work keeping this material in print.
If this conversation sparked something in you, don't just take our word for it. Don't just listen to two people chatting about it. Go deeper. Go to the source.
Seriously, reading the sessions yourself is a whole different experience. There is an energy in the text that we can't fully replicate. You can find them at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That is sethcenter.com/the early sessions.
Check it out. Support the preservation of this material. It's a library of the human soul.
And until next time, keep your room well ordered, watch your broadcasts, and maybe wipe out a few of those negative images before they stick.
Good night, everyone.
Stay chillin'.